My own wife and brother plotted to drug me, so I'd unknowingly hand over my company. I caught her whispering on the phone, "Just a few more weeks and it'll all be ours." I stayed quiet, pretended to fall for it, gathered all the proof I needed, set the perfect trap, and took them both down in federal court. But before all that, I was just a guy who built something. I started Horizon Energy Innovations from scratch. Just a trade school certificate and a $10,000 loan from my grandfather. I worked like hell, door to door, rooftop to rooftop, handling everything myself. No investors, no safety nets. Just me, my truck, and the will to prove I wasn't some nobody. Within a few years, I had contracts across Riverbend, Colorado, and Silver Peaks, Wyoming. My company was pulling in over $3 million a year. I bought a custom home, drove a blacked-out Ford Raptor, and finally had people calling me sir. It felt good. Like I finally mattered. Then Marcus came in, my older brother, the golden boy with the MBA. He had charm, slick talk, and all the approval I never got. After 2 failed startups, he joined my company as a partner. People treated him like the real brains behind it all, even though he showed up late and left early. I let it slide. He was family. So was Isabella, my wife. At least, I thought she was. She supported me in the early days. Or pretended to. I never imagined she'd be plotting behind my back with Marcus. I thought I had built a life. Turns out, I built a target. But they had no idea who they were playing with. Few more weeks and everything's ours. The new dosage works beautifully. I froze when I heard those words. I had come down the stairs slowly that morning, still feeling the usual fog in my head. My body felt heavy, my thoughts were scattered, and my heart kept racing like it was trying to warn me about something. I didn't expect to hear anything. I was just heading to the kitchen for water. But when I heard Isabella's voice on speakerphone, I stopped behind the wall. Then I heard Marcus respond. My brother. Laughing like a winner. They didn't know I was listening. My blood ran cold. In that 1 second, everything clicked. The exhaustion. The dizziness. The confusion. For weeks, I thought something was wrong with me. Maybe I was burnt out. Maybe I was pushing too hard. But now I knew. They were drugging me. Slowly. Carefully. Making me weak so I'd hand over my company without even realizing it. So I'd sign things I couldn't remember. So they could walk away with everything I built from nothing. I didn't walk into the kitchen. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood still, breathing through my nose, fists clenched so tight they ached. My heart wanted to explode. But I forced myself to stay calm. If I confronted them, they'd deny it. If I showed I knew, they'd hide the evidence. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I turned around, walked back upstairs, and let them believe I was still their fool. That same day, I started planning. First, I acted exactly how they expected. Confused. Drowsy. Weak. I let Isabella serve me her carefully prepared meals. I nodded off during meetings on purpose. I let Marcus talk over me during company calls. Every time they thought I was slipping, I was actually watching, listening, waiting. Then I called the only person I trusted, Jax Coleman. He'd been my best friend since we were kids. A plumber, a joker, but loyal like a brother. I didn't tell him everything over the phone, just that I needed help, and it was serious. He came over that night. I faked feeling dizzy in front of Isabella and went to lie down early. Jax waited until she was asleep, then helped me collect food samples from the fridge and pack up the utensils she always used when serving me. The next morning, I went to a private clinic out in Silver Peaks. Paid cash. Blood test. Urine test. Toxicology. 2 days later, the results came back. My system had been loaded with lorazepam and metoprolol. The doses were small but steady. Enough to slow me down, keep me foggy, mess with my heart and memory. The kind of dosage that wouldn't kill, but would make someone look unstable. I stared at those papers for a long time, shaking. I knew now. This wasn't just betrayal. It was attempted destruction. I hired a private investigator next. Darius Kane. Ex-military, no nonsense. He didn't ask questions, just got to work. Installed hidden cameras in the kitchen, living room, and even the bedroom. Within days, we had footage of Isabella pulling pill packets from a tampon box and slipping them into sauces. We recorded her on calls with Marcus, talking about timing and paper and how they needed to act fast before he notices. But I had already noticed. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was building a case. Quietly, carefully. Every meal I pretended to eat, Jax replaced with clean food. Every document they wanted me to sign, I delayed with excuses. I smiled at them like nothing was wrong. But deep inside, I was already setting the trap. Meanwhile, Marcus kept texting her from his office across town. Their messages were full of codes and vague plans, but it wasn't hard to understand what they were saying. They were getting ready for something big. He wanted me to sign documents soon. He was in a hurry, probably scared I'd change my mind. I smiled at every message and told him I'd review the paperwork later. The longer I delayed, the more confident they became. I also started backing up everything: the videos, audio clips, screenshots of texts. I stored them on drives hidden in Jax's house and sent encrypted copies to a cloud server under a fake name. If something happened to me, I wanted that evidence safe. I wasn't just collecting proof anymore. I was building a case, a timeline, a story that could stand in court. The hardest part wasn't hiding the truth. It was seeing them up close every day and pretending I didn't know. Watching Isabella kiss me on the cheek while knowing what she was doing behind my back. Sitting across the table from Marcus as he smiled and called me little brother. But I kept my face straight, my voice steady. The mask stayed on. What they didn't know was that I had already turned the game around. While they plotted in shadows, I stood quietly in the light, recording every move. Their lies, their drugs, their fake affection. I took all of it and turned it into weapons. They wanted to break me slowly. I was going to crush them completely. And the best part, they wouldn't even see it coming. Living with people who are trying to destroy you is like walking through a minefield blindfold. Every smile from Isabella, every casual text from Marcus. I had to act like I believed it all. Like I didn't know they were feeding me poison or plotting to erase me from my own company. But behind the calm face, I was running 2 lives at once. One for them, one for me. Every morning, I'd sit down at the table, let Isabella serve me her special meals, and pretend to eat. I mastered the art of palming food, slipping bites into napkins, pretending to chew, acting like everything tasted just fine. Jax called it my Oscar-worthy performance. He was always nearby, usually parked a few houses down, ready to drop off a clean meal the second I stepped outside. He'd pass me food in containers like he was delivering lunch from a restaurant. We made jokes about it. Weirdest diet plan ever, he said once. You're losing weight, but mostly from carrying all this rage. Still, the tension never left. Every minute I was home felt like a test. I had to time my reactions, make sure I didn't raise suspicion. If I looked too alert, too focused, Isabella would notice. So I kept my eyes low and my voice soft. I let her think the drugs were working. I let her believe she was in control. But the cameras Darius had installed were doing their job perfectly. While I played the fool, they kept catching everything. One evening, Darius sent me footage that made my jaw tighten. Isabella wasn't just working with Marcus anymore. She had started meeting with someone else. A woman. Tall, sharp-looking, and very familiar. After a few hours of digging, Darius confirmed it. Her name was Claire Monroe, a forensic accountant, and more importantly, Marcus's ex-girlfriend from grad school. That changed everything. Claire had been brilliant, even back then. If she was involved now, this wasn't just a con, it was something deeper, something financial. Darius started tailing her quietly. He followed her to a co-working space downtown, where she met with Isabella twice in the same week. They exchanged folders, talked with hushed voices, and left separately. It wasn't personal. It was professional, strategic, planned. And it didn't stop there. Darius pulled records from the state's business registry. That's when we found Summit Solar Holding, a fresh shell company, registered under an out-of-state name that led back to Marcus. Same industry, same style. Everything about it was built to look like Horizon's twin. But it had one purpose: to replace Horizon after they pushed me out. I stared at the paperwork in disbelief. The timeline was clear. Marcus was setting up a fake sale. Isabella and Claire were handling the cleanup. Once I was too unwell to run Horizon, they'd pressure me to sell it, probably for cheap. Transfer the clients and contracts to Summit Solar. Bury Horizon quietly, then walk away with everything. They weren't just trying to steal my life. They were trying to erase it. Knowing this gave me more fuel, more reason to stay patient. I stopped looking at Isabella like my wife. I stopped calling Marcus brother in my head. They were enemies now, smiling snakes in familiar skin. Every handshake, every kiss goodnight, every text, they were lies. But I smiled back. Ate fake meals. Pretended I was fading. Meanwhile, I was wide awake. And I wasn't just surviving. I was preparing. After we uncovered Marcus's shell company and the meetings with the forensic accountant, I knew the next step had to be bigger. We had all the pieces, proof of poisoning, secret business setups, shady meetings, but we needed someone who could put it all into motion legally. That's when I reached out to Lena Petrova. Lena wasn't just any lawyer. She was sharp, cold, and relentless in court. She'd handled a high-profile fraud case the year before and won it without blinking. I met her through a former business partner who owed me a favor. When I told her everything, she didn't look surprised. She just nodded and said, "We're going to do this clean." Her first move was bringing in the FBI. She didn't waste time with local authorities. She knew this was bigger than family betrayal. It was financial fraud, drugging, and corporate manipulation. When we handed them the evidence, the agents didn't ask if it was real. They asked how soon we could bring the targets into one room. That's when Lena came up with the trap. We were going to stage a fake company sale. It had to look real enough to pull Marcus and Isabella in, but controlled enough to let the agents move when the time was right. Lena had me draw up a set of final company sale documents. Ownership transfers, valuations, legal jargon, all fake, but professional enough to fool anyone. The plan was to invite Marcus and Isabella to the Horizon office under the pretense that I was stepping down due to my health issues. I was going to sell the company quietly and internally. I had to play the role. I started acting worse in front of them. My speech slowed. I stopped going into the office as often. I let my hands tremble around them, let them see me struggling with basic tasks. Isabella played the concerned wife. Marcus just looked satisfied. Every time I acted more helpless, he became more confident. It was sickening to watch. The pressure started to build fast. Marcus began calling more often, checking in on the paperwork. "Time is money, little brother," he said over coffee one morning. "If you're not ready to handle things, someone else should." He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I kept stalling just enough to keep him hooked. Meanwhile, Lena and the FBI set up recording equipment inside my office's conference room. Every corner was wired. Adjacent rooms were prepared for agents. We scheduled the fake signing day. Everyone would be in place. All we had to do was bring the monsters into the cage. The night before the meeting, I sat alone in the office, staring at the company logo on the wall. Horizon Energy Innovations. This wasn't just a business. It was my blood, my sweat, my years. And they thought they could take it all from me with a few pills and forged papers. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted it to be morning already. I wanted to look Marcus and Isabella in the eye while they still believed they had won. I wanted them to feel comfortable, just long enough to realize they were walking straight into the end of their own plan. And this time, it wouldn't be me losing anything. The day of the meeting finally arrived. I walked into the Horizon boardroom dressed sharp, but made sure to keep the act going. Slow movements, tired eyes, and just enough of a wobble in my steps to make them believe I was still under the poison's effects. Isabella arrived first, carrying coffee and fake concern like always. Marcus followed, all smiles and fake warmth. He brought 2 men with him, supposedly legal advisors, but I could see through them. They weren't lawyers. They were vultures, here to watch me hand over everything. The room was tense but quiet. The large conference table was neatly set. A silver tray held the final ownership transfer documents, crafted by Lena, loaded with enough bait to hook them, and enough holes to prove their greed. They thought I was broken, that I was too weak to fight back, that today would be the end of my reign. Marcus stood up first, and began to speak like he owned the place already. "This is the smoothest way forward," he said. "You get rest, Isabella helps with the transition, and we keep Horizon in the family. Just sign, Ethan." I didn't respond. Not yet. I let a few moments pass. I glanced at the papers, flipped them without reading, then finally looked up at both of them. I reached into my bag slowly, purposefully, and pulled out a thick black folder. I placed it in the center of the table. "What's this?" Marcus asked, trying to laugh. I opened it. One by one, I slid the contents across the table. Lab results showing drugs in my system, screenshots of their messages, printed documents about Summit Solar Holdings, and photos of Isabella caught on camera tampering with food. Their faces changed instantly. What is this, Ethan?" Isabella stammered. "You know exactly what this is," I said quietly. "Photos, videos, lab reports, everything, every lie, every pill, every meeting." Marcus scoffed and looked toward his fake lawyers, but they didn't move. "Come on," he muttered. "This is ridiculous." I leaned back in my chair. "Family doesn't poison family, Marcus. And I hope those witnesses of yours were ready to testify in federal court, because they're not going anywhere." Right on cue, the door to the adjacent room opened. 2 FBI agents stepped in, followed by Lena. Marcus froze. His face turned pale. Isabella backed into her seat, mouth open, eyes darting toward the exit. But there was nowhere to run. The agents approached calmly. One of them spoke, his tone firm but measured. "Marcus Vance, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted corporate theft, and intentional poisoning with the intent to manipulate business assets." Marcus tried to speak, but the words didn't come. They cuffed him on the spot, read him his rights, and let him out. Isabella stayed frozen, too stunned to speak. I didn't say a word to her. I just watched her eyes, wide, desperate, unsure if she was next. She had gambled everything on control, and now that power was crumbling in front of her. As the room cleared, Lena walked over and gently shut the folder. "You held your ground," she said. I nodded, still processing the silence after the storm. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. For every night I went to bed drugged, for every fake smile they gave me, for every plan they whispered behind my back. They thought I'd be gone before I ever noticed. But I was watching. And today they finally saw me. The air in the car was still as Jack's, and I sat parked across the street from the bank. We didn't speak much. Just stared ahead, waiting. It was one of those moments where the silence said more than words ever could. Jax had a sandwich in his hand, untouched. I had my fingers tapping against the steering wheel, slow and steady. Both of us watching. Then she appeared. Isabella walked out of the bank like nothing had happened. Designer bag in hand, heels clicking, sunglasses on. Calm. Confident. She looked like the same woman who used to kiss me goodbye every morning. But now all I saw was a mask. A mask built on lies, greed, and betrayal. She had no idea what was waiting for her. From the opposite side of the parking lot, 2 unmarked black vehicles pulled in. Agents stepped out quickly and moved toward her. She froze for half a second, confused. Then they called her name. Isabella Rossi? She turned slowly, expecting a polite conversation. But when she saw the badges, her expression cracked. She tried to back away, mumbling something about a mistake. But it was too late. One agent began reading her rights while the other secured her wrists behind her back. The sunglasses slipped off her face. That calm, perfect image was falling apart right in front of us. Jax leaned forward, eyes locked on the scene. She looks like she just saw a ghost, he muttered. But what came next made the entire operation worth it. Isabella snapped. Right there in front of everyone, she started yelling, her voice shrill and shaking. You're nothing without Marcus. He was the brains. You'd be flipping panels in the sun if it weren't for him. The agents tried to calm her down, but she didn't stop. I should have used more poison, she screamed. Time froze. Jax looked at me, eyebrows raised. My stomach turned, not out of fear, but out of finality. That was it. The one sentence we didn't even need her to say. But now we had it, recorded loud and clear on federal surveillance. The woman who had spent weeks pretending to love me while slowly poisoning me had just confessed, out loud, in public, in her own voice. As they pushed her into the backseat of the car, she looked around one last time, like she expected someone to come save her. But no one moved. No one cared. And I wasn't the man she used to fool anymore. Jax leaned back in his seat and whistled low. She's done. I nodded. It wasn't joy I felt. It wasn't even revenge. It was peace. Not because she was caught, but because she couldn't lie her way out of it anymore. Her story had ended, and mine had just begun. A few days after Isabella's arrest, things started to settle, or so I thought. The media had picked up the story, the company was stabilizing under my full control, and for once, I could breathe without second-guessing my own thoughts. But peace doesn't last long when your last name means more to others than your pain. It was early evening when I heard a knock at the front door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Jax was out handling errands, and Darius was on a call. When I opened the door, my heart sank. Standing there were my parents, my aunt, and my uncle. All 4 of them, faces tight with anger, not concern. They didn't greet me. They just walked in without asking, like they owned the place. We need to talk, my father said sternly. My mother's eyes scanned the living room like she didn't recognize it anymore. You've gone too far, she said coldly. I didn't respond. I just stood by the door, listening. Then my uncle stepped in. Drop the charges, Ethan. He's your brother. Family handles family issues privately. My aunt nodded. We can fix this. Quietly. You've made your point. I stared at them, stunned. Not a single one asked if I was okay. Not one word about the drugs, the betrayal, the lies. All they cared about was Marcus. All they saw was their precious golden boy behind bars, and I was the one they blamed. He tried to kill me, I said, my voice low. He poisoned me. He made a mistake, my father snapped. He was under pressure. You can't just throw away family. I laughed, cold, bitter, tired. No, he threw me away. You all did. The second you chose to stand behind him instead of asking what he'd done. My mother looked like she wanted to argue, but Darius stepped out from the hallway. His presence alone was enough to make my uncle go quiet. Then Jax came in through the back door and raised an eyebrow at the group, sensing the tension instantly. This is still my house, I said. And this is done. They didn't move at first, still believing they had the power to change my mind. But Darius and Jax stood firm. Finally, my father muttered something under his breath and turned for the door. My mother gave me one last disappointed glance. Not regret, not shame, just disappointment, like I had failed them. When the door shut behind them, the silence felt heavier than ever. Jax walked over and clapped a hand on my shoulder. You okay? He asked. I nodded, but the truth was I didn't know. That was the day I realized blood doesn't always mean loyalty. Sometimes it just means shared history, and nothing more. They weren't here to help me heal. They were here to protect the name, not the person. And if I had to walk this road alone to stay alive, so be it. The courtroom was silent when the verdicts were finally read. Isabella, 6 years for poisoning and fraud. Marcus, 8 years for racketeering. Extended to 12 after investigators uncovered multi-state scams tied to his shell company network. Neither of them flinched. No tears, no apologies, just cold stares as if they still believed they didn't deserve it. I didn't look at them. I focused on the judge, the lawyers, the facts. It wasn't about feelings anymore. It was about justice. What they tried to steal wasn't just money or a business. It was my life. And now, for the first time, the system was speaking on my behalf. The civil case followed quickly. My legal team filed for damages, emotional distress, attempted corporate theft, and financial manipulation. The court awarded me $850,000 in compensation. But the real win wasn't just the money. It was full, uncontested ownership of Horizon Energy Innovations. No more Marcus listed as partner. No more backdoor deals. My name was the only one left on every document. Then came the final twist: Isabella's parents. They had co-signed several of her loans, including a massive refinance for their Aspen home to help her cover private business expenses. Turns out, some of that money was used to fund her meetings with the forensic accountant and keep Summit Solar Holdings afloat. When the fraud charges stuck, those debts came crashing down. Their home was seized, sold, gone. No one clapped. No one cheered. Justice isn't loud. It's quiet, final, sharp. Outside the courthouse, reporters hovered, waiting for a statement. I didn't give them one. I walked past the cameras, past the noise, past the world that had watched my downfall and come back like a show. I wasn't interested in fame. I just wanted my life back. Back at the office, Lena handed me the final paperwork. I signed the last page that made Horizon Energy Innovations 100% mine again. No shares, no disputes, no ghosts. Jax came in carrying 2 coffees. Victory tastes a lot like caffeine, he joked. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because it was finally over. They tried to break me in silence, but I came back with noise they couldn't escape. And now every lie they told, every trick, every pill, every forged paper was recorded, judged, and punished. They thought they could ruin me and walk away. But I walked away the only one standing. A year passed and everything changed. Horizon Energy wasn't just surviving, it was soaring. Revenues climbed to $8 million. The team grew to 87 strong, and we moved into a brand new headquarters built from the ground up. Clean lines, solar tech innovations, and a giant sign out front that read, Horizon Energy, rising above. Every time I walked past it, it reminded me that even after being buried in betrayal, I rose anyway. The company had become more than just a business. It was proof that I wasn't weak, that I wasn't broken, and that everything they tried to take from me only made me sharper. One afternoon, I sat alone in my office. The sun poured in through the tall windows. On my desk was a thick envelope, letters from prison. One from Marcus. One from Isabella. Apologies, regret, a few lines begging for forgiveness. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. Instead, I fed them slowly into the shredder beside my desk, 1 page at a time. The machine hummed quietly as their words turned to dust. No anger, no tears, just silence. When the last page disappeared, I stood and looked out over the floor below. My team was working, smiling, building something real, something honest. They tried to end me, but I didn't just survive. I rebuilt stronger than ever. And I rose. Did I do the right thing by shredding their letters and walking away? Or should I have heard them out? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more stories like this.